A while back, I did a talk about sort of perceiving one situation from another state, and a lot of times we might notice what state we're in and reflect on that. Um, but there can be another layer, which is sometimes we're in one state, and um, and then we have a feeling about the state. And I mentioned on that recording that this was something that Virginia Satir, who was a famous family therapist, used to sort of comment on with people. She would notice what state they were in, and then she would say, "How do you feel about being in that state?" And then there's a gentleman, Michael Hall, in the NLP community, and he calls this a meta state, a state about a state, and that work is pretty interesting as well. But the way that I wanted to talk about it today is that very often our mood, or whatever state we're in, can act as that kind of a lens to whatever's going on. So in the example I was talking about a minute ago, I might be upset and I might be frustrated that that I'm upset. So it's frustration about being upset. If your default state in that moment is one of curiosity, you might get curious about why you're upset. Or if you're somebody who's often amused, you might be even amused about the fact that you're getting upset. And I always reflect on one friend of mine that kind of whatever happens, he finds humor in it. He's really good at noticing what's kind of funny or interesting about things. So from time to time, I find it to be really useful to take an inventory of my states over time and just notice, okay, what are states that I consistently visit on a regular basis? And then it's interesting to sort of choose a state to land in throughout your day and see how that impacts it. If you really took some time getting into a state of like, what's it like when you're amused, when you're just generally amused with things, either you find them enjoyable or funny, or curious or interesting. I put all of these in this category of being amused. And it's really fascinating looking through a lens of being amused. Or a cousin to that is being fascinated. Like I like solving puzzles and things, so very often it's easy for me to get into fascination about a predicament that I may find myself in, or a predicament that other people are in. I think in coaching, sometimes somebody will come with a seemingly really pressing situation, and I could respond by being alarmed by that. But unfortunately, that would put me in a disempowered state. But instead, if I get really curious and get sort of fascinated with it, I may see something that's going on structurally. Like I may notice something that they haven't been able to notice that could, help bring them some relief. So I love the state of fascination. And, I think that's why I like comparing different models, because I can get endlessly fascinated by, how one person approaches something versus how another person approaches it. When I was growing up and studying music, I was always curious about different teachers because I wanted to know what was each teacher's perspective on things. So I really enjoyed looking at things through a lens of fascination. Now, we all have days where we're not wearing sort of optimistic glasses, but we might be wearing glasses of things are really difficult. And I'm not judging this. I'm pointing it out because it's a useful thing to notice that sometimes if we're looking at things about like through a lens of things being difficult, our brain will find difficulty. It's almost like we're setting up our circuits to discover what can be difficult in something. When I'm in certain moods, I can be offended by anything, and I'll be so quick to get offended because I'm in an offended state. And so, then I'm like, yeah, I'll go to a restaurant, I'll get offended at the waiter, I'll get offended by somebody sitting next to me. I'm laughing at it now because now I'm in more of an amused state. But when I'm in that state, I'm not. I'm actually just easy to get offended because I'm looking at things through that frame, or from that sort of default position in the moment of being offended. And then, if you're lucky, maybe somebody cracks a joke and all of a sudden you shift into a different state, and maybe you start to find the humor in the situation that's around you. So, the idea here is to notice not just what state you might find yourself in, but what state are you looking at your situation through? Is there a default position that you may not be noticing? What state are you in when you wake up in the morning? What state are you when you're getting ready for work, or when you're at work, or when you're visiting friends? Are there sort of habitual states that you get in? And if there are, that's fine. Notice them, make a note of it, and then decide, like, would I like to play a different state on the jukebox, and pick a place, even just for variety's sake, something that can make things new. It was interesting during the pandemic. I was spending so much more time at home in a particular routine, more than I usually do, and I'm a pretty routine person. And because of that, it really got me to seek out different ways of looking at things, because otherwise it seemed like it was Groundhog's Day. It was like the same thing every day. But at a certain point, I started looking at, okay, what are some different things that I can explore here, so that even though my outer context isn't shifting, I'm bringing a new perspective to things and making new discoveries, hopefully. As much as I like to travel, I don't like the idea that I have to travel to get a new perspective. Why not get a new perspective right where you are? So that's something that I would recommend that you give a try. It can be really fun to just notice what state you're in as a filter on whatever you're experiencing, and then pick another one, and then pick another and another and another, and see how it shifts your perception of what's going on around you.